There are so many things we have to think about with our aging parents, but one of them is what if they own a business?
Today, we're bringing in Jeff Barnett, who is an estate planning and business attorney with Barnett and Luty Law Firm. Because, Jeff, as we are thinking about all of the things that we're thinking about as we care for our aging parents, if they own a business, that's definitely something we need to be thinking about. And what should we be thinking about first?
Yeah, whether or not you want to sell the business, and if money is needed either for retirement for the business owner, or after death for the surviving spouse. That's one thing, and there's lots of considerations though.
Yeah.
Big thing to think about is when do you sell? If you do want to sell, do we sell it now? Do we sell it later? Does it really matter?
That's a really good question. So, first you got to think about whether to sell the business at all, and if so, whether to sell that business to, whether it's prior to the aging parent's death or to sell it after the aging parent dies. And if you're selling, you got to determine whether you're going to sell to family members or whether you're going to sell to someone on the outside, like to third parties or whatever that have not been involved, or maybe to employees of the company who are going to take it over, or to other business partners. And then there's whether to transfer it, after death to family, to business partners, to others via a will or a trust, or maybe some kind of a situation where the buy-sell agreement or the shareholder agreement between the owners mandates that it be sold, to the other partner or to the other partners,
Mhm.
and so there's all those different things that factor into that.
What do you do in the situation where the family wants to take it over or wants to, continue the business with one of the family members?
Yeah, so as long as it's not prohibited by some kind of a buy sell that mandates it, be sold to somebody else, one of the other partners or something like that, then yeah, in your will or in your trust, you can give it away to family members. And we talk about giving it away. It is possible, like I said earlier, to even sell to family members. Maybe the money is needed for retirement or for the surviving spouse. So a family member is actually going to buy it from mom and dad or from
Hmm.
Uncle Bob or whatever. Uh, you know, so so those so if a family member is going to take it over, basically, a lot of times you'll want to bring them in, and help with the transition, and you'll want to kind of bring them along in the business and that kind of thing.
There are so many options involved, but is it all personal preference? Are there business situations in the options that we're trying to decide?
Yeah, sometimes it's personal preference, and sometimes that it is something that's mandated in a buy-sell agreement or a shareholder agreement. That it has to be sold to other partners or whatever. But if there are no other partners involved, or if there's no restriction, then it absolutely can be personal preference how you want to do it.
Whether you do it before or
Or
after.
after? Yeah.
And are there
Oh, right, right.
Yeah. And are there considerations, and I guess also, does it depend on what the size of the business? If they have, a solo business or just a few employees, or they have 50 employees or 100 employees, does it make a difference if the size of the business?
I mean, it's going to make a difference in the complexity of the transaction, no matter what. And of course, even just suddenly inheriting a business that you haven't been a part of. If it's something small, it may not be that big a deal. If it's something big, it might be something you have to hire somebody else to just to even learn and know how to do.
Mhm.
So there's lots of considerations there. Um, so yeah.
Is there I'll call it a time crunch? Is there a certain time when we have to decide this? Like with my dad. My dad's 88. He's still alive. Everything's still good. But if he owned a business, should I have done something 10 years ago? Can I do it now? Can I wait? Is there a time frame that I needed to get things done?
It does depend on, like I said, all these various different factors. I mean, if the money is needed, for retirement or for a surviving spouse, then yeah, if it's for retirement, then you need to be talking about it, before you start declining in health, and before
Right.
I mean, obviously a sudden death, nobody can help that, but if you're going to if you're going to transfer the business after death, or at least well into your aging process, you may want to bring someone along, kind of, and teach them the ropes, and show them the ropes, and help the transition, because some businesses, that's something too that I was thinking about a minute ago and didn't get back to. But some businesses are very personal to the owner. There may be, it's a skill set that the owner has that not just everybody has. Maybe the son doesn't have it. Maybe the daughter doesn't have it. Maybe nobody else in the family has it. And so they either need to be brought along, or they need to be taught, or that it needs to be sold to someone who can actually take it over and do something with it, and then the money can be used to by the family to do something else.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about, kind of I guess, first decisions are, does somebody in the family want to take it over? I guess that would be part of the consideration, or has the
Yeah.
capability to do it. And if
Right.
so, does it need to be, can it be given to the family member? Does it need to be sold to the family member? And at
Mhm.
what point, how involved should the parent be, and for how long? I guess, is that also part of the consideration too? Is even, we may be planning ahead, but dad's still running the business today, but we're just trying to start planning ahead for, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
In the ideal situation, you either start talking about this, when they are in their younger senior years, and you start planning this, and you either sell it, and then use that money to travel and enjoy life, or if you're bringing somebody along, if you're planning to give it to family or whatever, bring that person into the business, and teach them the ropes and everything, because that transition is important. If you have built a business, and whether it's even if it's sort of small, and certainly if it's large and more complicated, you've got customers, you've got vendors and suppliers and relationships, and if somebody's coming in cold, they could completely flop, and they could completely ruin a wonderful business that's been ongoing for many years or even decades. And but just because there's no relationships there, there's nothing warm to make it an easy transition. So it's definitely good to either, if you're selling it, then provide for a transition period as part of the sale, where the owner stays on for a while, or if you're giving it to family members, again, you want to have that transition there. And the younger you start, the more sure the more sure the situation is, that you're going to be able to have that transition period. I mean, because if you wait too long, you could end up with some kind of a head injury, or Alzheimer's, or some kind of a physical impairment, and you can't teach what
Yeah.
Mhm.
and you can't provide that transition assistance. So it's definitely good to be thinking about these things early.
Mhm.
That's a good tie into the next question that I have is what are the biggest mistakes we can make as we're preparing that, as far as the family business, whether it's we're keeping it or selling it, whatever it is, what are the biggest mistakes you've seen people make?
Well, it's kind of similar, actually, to the same thing that we talk about when talking about a will, or when we're talking about a trust, or when we're talking about, probate, or just anything legal. You don't know what you don't know, and so when you're not an attorney, you're not going to know, all of the important things about what need to go into a contract, for the sale of a business, and all of the closing documents, and all of the other ancillary documents that become part of a sale transaction,
Mhm.
or a transition, a transfer transaction. And it's very important to make sure that those are in place, and that they're done by a professional, because again, you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't do it right, then it's not going to be what you want it to be, and you may end up having litigation later, because somebody did something wrong. You may have a way for you may open up a way for someone to pierce the company veil and get behind to your personal assets, or that kind of thing. you never know. There's all different kinds of things that can go wrong if you do it. If it's a DIY
Hmm.
business sale, or a DIY will, or a DIY trust, or anything
Hmm.
like that. So
Well, and I guess too, just also that the idea of, I would guess one of the big mistakes you can make too is just not having thought through this at all, and then something happens to the person who owns the business, and nobody knows what the plan was or what the ideas were or
yeah,
who's going to take it over, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. It's one of those things that you begin planning early. People should be talking about doing their wills when they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and people should be talking about selling their businesses when they're in their 50s and 60s. Not necessarily that they have to leave. They can just be setting up the plan and
Yeah.
Hmm.
and talking to a business broker, talking to a business mergers and acquisitions attorney. That's kind of the lingo that for the type of attorney that handles business sales and
Hmm.
purchases and things like that. You don't have to actually pull the trigger on that at that point, but just start talking about it. Know what and don't just talk about it. Just that business owner, that man or that woman that runs the business, but as a family,
Hmm.
and the husband and wife, or the two spouses together, whoever they are, maybe even the kid sits in on the conversation, and so that if the time came sooner, and more expected, more unexpected,
Hmm.
then everybody's ready, even if, you didn't actually get it done before death, but at least everybody knows what the plan was.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Better to plan and prepare. Jeff Barnett, thanks so much for all the great tips as always.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm always glad to be a guest and help out.
Thank
Thank you.
you. I think what
Well,
we're learning again, just like we've learned from before with Jeff and Keith
mm,
Ludy, is that especially with legal stuff, you've got to plan, you've got to prepare, and just be ready
well,
because you don't want it to sneak up on you.
well, and as we talk about all of the factors as we care for our aging parents, is the more prepared you are, the earlier you have these conversations, the easier they are, and then everybody's just on the same page.
Exactly. If there's any other topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know. Parenting aging parents.